future of cellular analytics isn't bigger machines. It's smarter, scalable tools that meet researchers where they are. That's according to Eric Mayton, CEO of Cerillo, the company transforming cellular analytics with compact tools that bring real-world biological data into every lab. Join us for an insightful conversation with Eric Mayton on Life Sciences Decoded. Okay, well, Eric, welcome. Welcome to Life Sciences Decoded. We're excited to have you here. Can you just give us a little bit of background on Cerillo before we dive into the interview?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Megan. It's good to see you again. So Cerillo is an early stage biotools company that is headquartered in the great metropolis of Charlottesville, Virginia. So we are a spin out of the University of Virginia, focused on increasing the reproducibility and scalability of scientific research. And so we're a very small organization, but have a very large impact across the globe, honestly.
Can you tell me what you think is broken in scientific research right now and how you're fixing it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. The primary thing that we're looking to address is really increasing the flexibility and speed in which researchers can get their data, get access to their data, and interpret their data, and what sort of analysis they can get from that data, insights they can get from that data, and set up their next set of experiments. And so for us, we focus primarily in the microbial space historically. We're continuing to grow and scale outside of the microbial space, but we focus on what is actually happening with these microbes. For many years, researchers, the microbiome space and microbial research is still in its infancy if you compare it to biochemistry, chemistry, and the other things. But there's so many different species of microbes, right? You have trillions of species of microbes just on you as a person.
Yeah.
They don't exist in isolation. And yet the research has always traditionally been done in isolation because it is just so challenging to control the thousands of variables that have impacts in the way that these microbes are interacting with one another. And it's just made it extremely hard. And so what has happened is the computational biology, the ability to do your dry lab experiments, which are your genotyping and then doing some correlation analysis, basically, has driven what we've known as the scientific research process. But actually taking that to the wet lab has been too cost inefficient, so too expensive, too time consuming, and just too challenging to control everything. And what we do with our product lines, we have hardware, so we have miniaturized microplate readers that are specifically focused on a specific application.
Okay.
Software that allows the user to control that hardware, get the data off in real time, see the analysis, kind of plan their next set of experiments, probably 2 to 3 days before they would be able to with traditional readers. And then a specialized plastic consumable that actually allows them to understand the cellular dynamics and how these cells are interplaying with one another. And so that's really where we see the problem in life sciences being. It's just the tools that researchers have been using have been focused on historical methodologies as opposed to keeping up with what they need in today's day and age, especially for the microbial research.
You have a duet system that is doing what others can't. What's the secret? What does this do?
It's basically, if you take two wells in a traditional plastic microplate, but instead of having them separated by a piece of plastic so that they're taking up two separate, basically, environments with a semi-permeable membrane between them. So the two environments are a shared environment, but the cells stay physically separated.
Okay.
And so why is that important? Because remember, I just said that these microbes don't exist in isolation, but yet if you are studying them in isolated environments, you're not really seeing what's happening in the real world. And you're getting, assumptions and data coming off of it that aren't accurate in a biological and physiological sense. And so by having a membrane where you have a shared environment there, but keeping them physically separated, you can actually see how they're interacting with one another outside of that physical contact. And so I'll give you just a handful of examples. I mean, we just released this product a little less than 2 years ago, and it has taken off. It's being used all across applications. Antimicrobial resistance is a big one. The easiest way to understand the impact of our product and how it can actually impact future human health and kind of at the bedside is we have an early user of our product line who identified in syphilis-resistant patients that he had. Uh, so, like, take a step back. So, this researcher is affiliated with a hospital system.
Okay.
And after COVID, that hospital system saw a massive spike in patients that had that had syphilis and urinary tract, infections associated with it that had a very high spike in antimicrobial resistance. And the reason
Mm,
being, you know, as COVID started, we didn't really know how to treat COVID. They just got tossed with antibiotics, and so it just increased the overall systemic antimicrobial resistance to that patient. So this researcher took a whole swath of these samples and started analyzing what was going on there. And what he found was in the urine, I believe, of these patients, there were three microbes that were consistently overexpressed. So three different species of bacteria that
mm,
were consistently overexpressed with these
wow.
three,
Okay.
right? And so what he was trying to identify is like, is it all three of these microbes that are causing the antimicrobial resistance? Is it a single species of bacteria? What's actually happening here? And so within one tray of our duet system, which is, 18 different interaction chambers, basically, he did multiple combinations, three microbes, zero, two, one, one, two, all these other things, right? And within one tray, one little microplate, he was able to identify that only one species of bacteria was actually resisting the treatment, and it was imparting that antimicrobial resistance to the entire patient. And so, what he's then able to do is develop a targeted therapeutic, whether that's a phage therapeutic or something else, for that one specific species of microbe, and therefore not just blast the patient with antibiotic and further increase their susceptibility to antibiotic resistant bugs, right? So that's one use case that he did with one tray. Whereas, we've had other people that are doing it with biofuel development. So they'll put algae on one side and then it produces a biofuel that they can be then scale up into a bioreactor. We've got groups that are using it to develop, alcoholic fermentation. So which strands of yeast are reacting best to different treatments and then producing, you know, quicker to ferment or, more producible strains of yeast. So it's kind of all over the place, but that's exactly what we strive to do is build a platform of products that, regardless of what your specific application is, if Megan is studying antimicrobial resistance versus, Jim down the street wants to go develop a new strain of probiotic to put in his yogurt, they still have the same set of tools because, we have a lot of yogurt manufacturers use our product. Um, they have the same set of tools that can, meet them where they need to be.
So it's flexible.
Very flexible. And as we continue scaling the business and scaling the product line, we focus on that flexibility.
Wow. So you are a smaller company in a crowded space. How do you punch above your weight? How are you getting into the companies or into the academic settings?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we are a very small group. Like we have 10 full-time people. And those 10 people include our sales reps, our product R&D, all these other things. And we're servicing almost 30 countries across the globe.
Wow.
Um, yeah, we can only do that by leaning in on partnerships. So we've got about 20 different partners internationally that we partner with, and I travel to visit them quite frequently. Um, and we kind of allow them to be our face in those geographies. But at the core, I think that the question that you're asking is, how is a 10-person company being able to make the traction that companies that have 100 or 200 or 1,000 employees may not be able to? And I think it really kind of comes down to one thing, and that is our ability to be agile. So our ability to get, iterations of our product in user hands, have the relationship with that user so that, we can get feedback from them very quickly and then incorporate that feedback into new iterations of the product and then get that ready for launch. And so that's where we do have the benefit of being a small team that's very lean. And also because our product line is, you know, fundamentally different in the biotool space, right? So a lot of biotools have, the big boxes, like what does your box do? in the biotool space, right?
Yeah.
Um, our entire platform fits in the size of a briefcase, right? And in fact, that's what we do. We ship it to our distribution partners across the globe as a field kit, and they can just take the briefcase and then go to the user lab, pop open the briefcase, and there you go. And so it allows us to, instead of having to have a team, an army of application specialists and an army of these scientists that have to travel and go install and take 2 weeks to install and train a user, we literally send a user a briefcase and some online videos, and then they're able to go from zero to data within 10 minutes. We've taken a very consumer focused and consumer centric approach, kind of like that Apple approach, and put it into the research tool space.
That's interesting because we were talking earlier about the change in how everything in technology, not even just science, is towards the self-service model. And so to have that ability for someone to be able to quickly pop the machine in, or however you want to describe it, and set it up is something that really doesn't require a whole onboarding process is great, especially when people want to accelerate their science.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that, we have learned through the process, and, we've only been selling these things, we've only been commercial truly for about 4 years. Um, and so, one of the things that we've learned through this process, and Megan was actually, you were a great help in this process about a year ago, is taking the FAQs, like looking at our support tickets that have come in, and we don't get a ton of support tickets. I mean, we definitely don't get a ton of repairs that come in. Um, and looking at the themes and then going out and putting out, on our website, our help center, right? The help center that had 90 plus of the FAQ, like 90% of the FAQs that people came in to do, and putting the manual online and putting a couple of like having our software engineer, again, benefit of being lean and small,
Right.
are the person that built the software walking the customer through a video of how to set up a plate and how to do this and this and this. Um, and then just putting it on the website and letting when we have a user that has a question or they're trying to unbox, just send them the link. And then that also allows us to update that regularly. Like if we have a massive product release, then we can control what's on the website on the user base as opposed to having, a 100-page catalog or a 100-page user manual that someone has to go through. You
You
know,
don't need that anymore. It should
you
always
don't. I
be
mean,
easy.
and when I was getting my scientific training and I was getting my, my graduate degree, it's been about 15 years now ago. It was very much you get the big manual and the three-ring binder and you follow step one to step two to step three. And it's just not how things work anymore.
Yeah.
Um, so
So that's what all science, basically scientific companies need to do that are providing a service and a product that can fit into a research setting. It does need to be user friendly. I think it's not it's a presumed attribute now. It's not a delighter. People presume it should be there, and if it's not,
and
they're in a little
the
pickle.
speed is like even in the past 12 months, the speed is advancing so much.
Yeah.
I look at companies like a friend of mine um, out on the West Coast just created he created a new company a while back, but they just announced their first round of funding. Um, and it's brilliant, but it is a company that uses large language models to basically design scientific research experiments, right? And so the power of the computational space in the bioinformatics space is growing exponentially faster than the power to actually test it in the lab. And so the tool companies and people that are developing new tools for researchers need to move at the same speed and don't get bogged down in the way that things have traditionally been. So
Right. So, how is AI affecting what you're doing? Is it it's as you said, it's accelerating the process now. So people don't need to be bogged down. But are there other ways that your organization is using AI at all, or just tying into people using AI?
yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. That kind of leads into what I was just talking about with my friend Nick out in on the
Okay.
West Coast. AI can mean a lot of different things. Just like we were talking earlier, life sciences means a lot of different things.
That's right.
AI means a lot of different things, right? Um, and in the scientific space, it means even more, right? Because, scientists are really doing multiple things with quote unquote AI. So let's talk about really quickly like large language models,
Okay.
which is what the consumer public thinks of as AI. So ChatGPT and the other models that go along with that, Canonical Llama and everything else. That has a great use case to increase efficiency um, for a scientist. But, I always go by the 10-80-10 rule anytime you're using a large language model, which is, 10% of the effort has to be done by the human to make sure that they're asking the right prompts. 80% of the effort can be done by the large language model. But that 10 on the back end is much more important because that large language model is going to spit out a lot of things that may or may not be appropriate, right? And so, what it does, it allows you to increase your productivity by 80%, which is a tremendous, right? That's a tremendous amount to go forward. And so, you asked, how is Cerillo using it? Well, Cerillo uses it like any lean, agile organization should be using it in this stage, which is increasing the efficiency of a lot of our back office things, right? So, utilizing uh, our CRM and some AI in the CRM to identify if a customer ticket comes in, what is this customer actually asking? Go up against all the other tickets in the past, give me your proposed response. But that 10% on the back end of human checking is quite, vitally important. Where does the user see the application? Well, you can do things like there's a couple of different companies that are doing really great things in scientific research with large language models. The first is Potato, who I've already referred to multiple times out on the West Coast, who just raised their seed funding. They're doing a great job of, they've basically built a large language model that can go scrape the internet for, if you're an academic researcher that says, I need a protocol that tells me how to analyze brain tissue from a mouse, blah, 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 right? It'll basically go through and scrape publications and give you an initial set of protocols that kind of like, here's what you should think about. Here's how you should set up your experiment, right? So basically taking away all of the need to have that graduate advisor say, go look at this paper and pull this material and pull that material and all, like all these other things. So again, just increasing the productivity by 80%. The other
And
group that,
connecting people.
well,
Which is interesting to hear a life science company talking about the importance of using AI. Everyone's talking about it in research as well, and which is extremely important, but that you're using it to analyze the kind of tickets that come in so you are better able to service your clientele and give them the right information for the questions and help them troubleshoot without it being something that would require a 2 week time period. They can instantly get access to what the information is that they need.
that's right. And then,
Yeah.
so the other tools company I think is doing a great job with the large language model is OpenTrons. And so, but they're using a similar application, which is protocol development, right? So meaning like I want to get this plate to pipette 90, 100 microliters into each well, blah, 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 right? Those are the kind of applications that large language models can do very well in science. What large language models cannot do very well in science is actually um, make insights off of experimental data.
Mm.
Okay. That's now, if you say AI can, but it's not a large language model. It's a different type of backend model. It's almost like just a fancy word for machine learning. That's really all AI is what we used to call 10 years ago machine learning in data science. Um, so that's with a better UI on the front, honestly. Um, but we can do things, and we actually do have a project that we have ongoing with a large government agency that is using a different model. It's called a Bayesian optimization model on the back end, and this is where companies are doing really great work for design of experiments. So groups like Synthase, right? Synthase doing a great job on, but that's where it's a different type of model on the back end that is able to take experimental data, do some analysis, and then do another set of recommendations for your next experiment and your next experiment. So it's what's called autonomous science, right? And so it basically tells you, here's how we should think you should, set up your next round. And that's part of what we're building into our software platform as well.
So is that getting into sort of taking a look into the future for Cerillo? Is that something that's coming down your pipeline or?
Yeah, I mean, we've already been doing it. We've already been developing it. We've already soft launched it with, a couple different users. Um, but back to your question on how does that differentiate us versus other companies? If you're a tools company and you don't have the mastery of a design of experiment thing or
Mhm.
design of experiment model within your platform, you're gonna get left behind.
Okay.
You're already gone, right? And so, but there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. There's lots of, integrations you can make into other platforms and other things. And so we've got a lot of, excuse me, a lot of new things in the pipeline, but the whole concept of, automated science, I think is really where things are going at the
I'm
bench.
so thankful that you joined us today because this is one of our first podcasts, and I've always been fascinated by Cerillo, especially the duet system and monitoring microbial interactions in real time. I always thought that was pretty fascinating. Thank you for being on the show, and we hope to interview you again soon, especially when you have some new products and some new developments to share with everybody.
Great. Great chatting, Megan.